The night Marcus Ellison paid for a stranger's room, he did not know he was standing at the edge of a life-altering storm, the kind that arrives quietly and changes everything by morning. Rain pressed against the city like a warning, cold and relentless, soaking his worn jacket as he stood outside a flickering motel sign, counting the last bills in his hand while his stomach growled and his thoughts drifted to his sleeping son at home. That small, tired choice, made by a black single father with nothing to spare but compassion, would unravel a truth so powerful it would shake the foundations of his world. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one is watching, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Marcus Ellison had learned how to stretch a dollar the hard way. After his wife passed away from an untreated illness they could not afford to fight long enough, life became a narrow hallway he walked every day with his son Caleb holding his hand. He worked maintenance at a downtown office building, cleaning floors after executives went home, fixing leaks no one wanted to notice, and collecting a paycheck that barely kept the lights on. Each night he returned to a small apartment that smelled of detergent and reheated dinners, where Caleb waited with homework spread across the table and a smile that made Marcus believe he could survive anything. He carried exhaustion like a second spine, but he also carried pride, and a promise to never let his son feel abandoned by the world. That night, after a double shift and a bus ride that felt longer than usual, Marcus stopped at a corner store to buy bread and milk. Outside, under the broken awning, he noticed a young woman sitting on the wet concrete, knees pulled to her chest, hair plastered to her face by rain. She looked too clean to be invisible and too tired to ask for anything. Marcus tried to walk past her, not because he did not care, but because caring had become expensive. Still, something tugged at him, the same instinct that made him get up every morning even when grief pressed down on his chest. He learned her name was Evelyn Harper, and that she had nowhere to go that night. Her voice shook from cold and hunger, and her eyes carried the kind of distance Marcus recognized from his own reflection. Without thinking too much, he took her to the motel across the street, the kind with cracked tiles and a clerk who did not ask questions. Marcus paid for one night, sliding his last cash across the counter, feeling fear rise in his chest as he imagined the rest of the week without it. He told himself that somehow it would work out, that it always did, even when it felt impossible. When Marcus finally reached home, Caleb was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a schoolbook resting on his chest. Marcus lifted him gently and tucked him into bed, whispering promises into the dark that he hoped the universe was listening to. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering if kindness was a luxury he could no longer afford, and whether he had made a mistake that would cost his son something essential. Morning arrived without mercy. Marcus dressed in his uniform, kissed Caleb goodbye, and hurried to work, his mind heavy with unpaid bills and what-ifs. The office building loomed tall and indifferent, its glass reflecting a city that seemed to move on without him. He spent the early hours polishing floors and emptying trash, bracing himself for a meeting he had been warned about. Rumors had spread that new management was coming in, that changes were inevitable, and that jobs like his were often the first to disappear. By mid-morning, supervisors began calling employees into the conference room one by one. Marcus waited, heart pounding, rehearsing explanations for his value that he knew would not be heard. When his turn came, he walked in with shoulders squared, ready for disappointment. But what he saw made his breath catch painfully in his chest. At the head of the table stood Evelyn Harper. She was no longer the soaked, trembling figure from the sidewalk. She wore a tailored suit, her posture calm and commanding, her eyes clear and focused. The room seemed to tilt as Marcus tried to reconcile the woman before him with the one he had helped less than 24 hours earlier. Papers were neatly arranged in front of her, and executives leaned in, listening intently as she outlined plans for restructuring, for ethical leadership, for rebuilding trust within the company. Marcus felt the world shrink to the sound of his own heartbeat. He expected recognition, confusion, anything. But Evelyn continued the meeting with professionalism, acknowledging him only with a brief, almost imperceptible glance that held something unspoken and heavy. When the meeting ended, employees filed out quietly, and Marcus remained rooted to the spot, unsure if he was dreaming. Later that afternoon, a memo circulated announcing Evelyn Harper as the new Chief Operations Officer, brought in to clean up years of mismanagement and restore integrity. Marcus read the words again and again, his hands shaking. He felt small and exposed, afraid that his kindness might somehow become a liability, that the imbalance of power would now crush him. The days that followed were tense. Changes came quickly, departments restructured, corrupt managers quietly dismissed. Marcus worked harder than ever, determined to stay invisible. He watched Evelyn from a distance as she walked the halls with purpose, listening more than she spoke, noticing details others overlooked. She treated janitors and executives with the same measured respect, and slowly, the building began to breathe differently. One evening, Marcus was asked to stay late to help prepare for an important inspection. As he cleaned a conference room long after sunset, exhaustion washed over him, and he allowed himself a moment to sit. That was when Evelyn entered, the hum of the city glowing through the windows behind her. The weight of the moment pressed down on both of them, years of struggle and a single night colliding in silence. Evelyn shared her story without drama. She had grown up in foster care, built her career from the ground up, and recently uncovered a financial betrayal that left her locked out of her accounts and stranded in the city during a critical transition. Pride had kept her silent on the sidewalk, fear had kept her still. Marcus's small act of kindness had not just given her shelter, it had reminded her of who she was before success hardened her edges. She explained that she had not acknowledged him earlier because she needed time to decide how to honor that kindness without diminishing it. From that night on, things began to change for Marcus, slowly and quietly, the way real miracles often do. His work was noticed. He was offered training opportunities, benefits he had never had before, and a schedule that allowed him to spend evenings with his son. His ideas about building maintenance efficiency were implemented, saving the company money and earning him respect. But more than that, the building itself changed, becoming a place where people greeted each other by name, where dignity was no longer rationed. At home, Caleb noticed the difference first. Marcus smiled more. The lines of worry on his father's face softened. Dinners became moments of laughter instead of silence, and the apartment felt warmer, not because of money, but because hope had moved in. Marcus never told Caleb about that rainy night right away. He wanted his son to learn kindness not as a transaction, but as a way of being. Months later, the company held a community outreach event, partnering with shelters and job training programs. Evelyn stood on stage, speaking about leadership and responsibility, about the unseen people who hold the world together. Marcus listened from the back, his hands rough and steady, his heart full and aching. He realized then that his life had not changed because of luck or rescue, but because kindness had set something in motion that even power could not stop. Just before this story reaches its end, take a moment and comment below what kindness means to you, because your words might inspire someone else who is struggling in silence right now. On the anniversary of that rainy night, Marcus and Evelyn crossed paths again in the lobby, both carrying the quiet knowledge of how close they had come to different fates. There were no speeches, no grand gestures, just mutual respect and an understanding that humanity had bridged a gap no policy ever could. Marcus went home that evening to help Caleb with homework, to cook dinner, to live a life that finally felt stable enough to dream in. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest act of compassion can echo louder than wealth or power, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and let us know in the comments how it made you feel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach more hearts, and together, we keep kindness alive in a world that desperately needs it.